It's the most powerful show on television. High drama with intense energy. A show dedicated to a few brave souls who risk their lives for the sake of their craft. Its in-depth reporting goes to the core and unlocks the mysteries behind today's raciest sport. Motorsports. Catch it when you can.
Hello everyone, welcome back to Post Tech. Today we move on to episode number 11. I'll tell you what, these episodes are starting to click off pretty quick. At least it feels to me the numbers getting up there pretty fast. But anyway, we come off a fantastic weekend of racing out at the Bristol Motor Speedway dirt track. SMI poured dirt and clay all over the Bristol Motor Speedway oval, and NASCAR held its first Cup Series race on dirt since 1970, and it absolutely delivered. So first of all, let's talk a little bit about the Camping World Truck Series race that was ran the night before, the Pinty's Truck Race on dirt. Stuart Friesen won the race in a rather close battle there at the end between himself and Tony Stewart. Unfortunately for Stewart, he had a right rear tire go down late in the race, which knocked him out of contention. I believe he finished about 2 or 3 laps down. But Tony Stewart, I believe, probably would have won that race if it was not for that flat tire, because he had just cleared Stuart Friesen when the tire went down. It was only 1 lap later when the tire let go on the 14 truck. But it was a great debut for TSR in the Camping World Truck Series and a great statement out of that organization. For their first time out, they have a shot at winning. Obviously, they have a driver that's fantastic, 3-time Cup champion Tony Stewart, and IRL champion, and so many other things that he's found success in. But also, more importantly, this was the debut of the Fury Racing chassis in the Camping World Truck Series. That was the chassis builder of the number 14 truck. Obviously, you know that is the primary chassis builder of the SRX, the Superstar Racing Experience that Stewart has founded with Ray Evernham, their whole new racing series. They will be running Fury Racing chassis. So even though the chassis is totally different on the SRX car, it was just a bit of a statement for Fury to come out there for the first time as well and have a race-winning truck. Unfortunate luck for Stewart and the whole organization, but it definitely made a statement. More news on the number 14 truck. Donnie Schatz will be the driver at the Knoxville Raceway in Knoxville, Iowa. So the string of dirt ringers in the 14 truck at dirt races will continue. It's most likely that he will also run the 14 truck at the Charlotte Motor Speedway dirt track in the playoffs as well. Sam Mayer will likely be back in the 57 Tide Chevrolet for Henderson Motorsports for those 2 races. And obviously for the rest of the short tracks that they don't bother fielding the number 14 truck in. Sam Mayer will be making his Camping World Truck Series Super Speedway debut this weekend at Pocono Raceway in the 14 truck for TSR as well. Still being sponsored by Advance Auto Parts. That's a big deal with TSR. They have sponsorship from Die Hard, CarQuest, and Advance Auto Parts. It's a whole package deal. It's not just one driver. It's not just Tony himself. So the whole organization gets that sponsorship. So odds are Donnie at Knoxville and at Charlotte will be running the CarQuest colors. Sam Mayer will be running Advance and possibly Die Hard when we show up to Milwaukee, because that will be a race primarily sponsored by Die Hard batteries. I also expect the number 04 truck of Corey Roper to likely run Die Hard colors at that race. We can't quite confirm any of this right now, but Roper is also sponsored by CarQuest and Advance and all that. So most likely 2 trucks will be representing their brands, even knowing that they're different manufacturers, Chevrolet and Ford. They're also different, organizations as a whole, but still they're both representing those companies. So it's an interesting sponsorship program out of Advance. They also sponsor the Weekly Racing Series, so they're having a really big amount of exposure in our sport. Let's talk a little bit about the surface at the dirt track. Obviously, you remember in the Pinty's Truck Race on dirt, the bottom groove was more or less the dominant lane. You could really get down there because they covered the apron as well in dirt, so it was all smooth. That's what led to a couple of those attenuator incidents, because they were running so low, and for every single lap they seemed like they kept getting lower. At a certain point, you run out of real estate, come up off the corners. If you make any contact with anybody, somebody's going to go off into the water barrels. Fortunately, that only happened twice in the Truck Series race. Could have happened a whole lot more times. And the only one that happened under green was Jessica Friesen getting turned by Timothy Peters. So that was fortunate that it only happened once. But SMI wetted down the top few grooves of the racetrack, bringing in the cushion, making that a very usable racing line, bringing in the middle lane of the racetrack, making that usable as well. It really balanced the racetrack for the Food City Dirt Race, and I believe it put on a fantastic show in the heat races and in the feature event. It was absolutely phenomenal for SMI to nail the setup of the racetrack. First out, first time they've ever done this with Cup Series cars, with NASCAR in general. I know years ago, 2000, 2001, they did it with World of Outlaws and their late models as well. But these are not dirt cars. You have to set up the track a little bit differently for these cars so that they don't just kick up the entire racing surface, just run it off the racetrack, keep digging down, essentially. That used to happen at dirt tracks way back in the day, about 50 years ago. You may know of Langhorne Speedway. They used to call that place Puke Hollow because it would develop divots that would make the driver's stomach sink when they would go into those divots. Well, that's what happens when you have really heavy stock cars running on not very well treated dirt tracks. So I applaud SMI for getting this right first time out, and it's going to introduce a lot of NASCAR fans into dirt racing, which I believe is fantastic exposure for really everyone involved. And the future of dirt racing in NASCAR, getting back to our roots, is very bright. Already NASCAR is in talks with a couple of dirt tracks, maybe getting around 3 dirt track races next season. Maybe being more like IndyCar in the sense of having a balanced schedule. It looks like dirt tracks and super speedways are the only underrepresented ones. I don't really think we need more super speedway races. Even knowing we've gotten the sport pretty safe, we don't need to take too many risks. But dirt track racing, listen, I know all the fans said that they wanted more short tracks and road courses, but what they actually meant to say is they wanted more short tracks. The whole road course thing was just because everybody loved the Roval, which I do too. But the Roval's special. All right, the Roval was a special deal. It's so compact that it's like a road course if it was a short track. It keeps the whole field together. These bigger road courses, the fans are starting to get a wake-up call by realizing maybe they didn't want road courses. They wanted tight racetracks. And dirt tracks will deliver. The good thing about dirt track racing is it doesn't allow you to get really spread out. It's very similar to the Roval in that sense of the best racing is when you're in close quarters. Unlike a dirt track like, say, DuQuoin. It's not a very big dirt track at Bristol. And most dirt tracks are not the size of DuQuoin. They're not 1 mile. Most are half a mile or smaller. So really, I think that if we can bring somewhere around 2 to 3 dirt track races a year, that will be a very good balance for what our sport needs. Because really, I was one of the people who used to say that Sonoma needed 2 dates. This is before the Roval was even built. It existed, but it wasn't on the NASCAR schedule, to put it simply. But I was one of the people who always thought that there should be a road course in the Chase. That's what it was back then. And I always thought it should be Sonoma as a second date, maybe the week after the IndyCar Championship race, which was what it was back then. So I'm a very big fan of having equality in a schedule, which I think is what the NGT Data IndyCar Series has going for it. Obviously, like I mentioned earlier, there's never going to be equal representation entirely just due to a shortage of tracks, for instance, in the super speedway category, and you balance that with safety. But we can get a pretty good balance of short tracks to intermediates to big speedways, stuff like that. The only type of track that I can see getting phased out in a little while is maybe the Pocono, Indianapolis style racetrack. I don't really think that too many fans are happy with that style of racing in our sport. However, hey, if Pocono gets in trouble, maybe has to, fall off the schedule, the same people who own Pocono own South Boston, and there's a 3/4 mile short track on the front stretch at Pocono. Use that, in my opinion. I think that should have been used for years. Upgrade that facility. Don't build a short track at Auto Club. Build a short track at Pocono. That's the place that needs it, even though it already has it. So actually, you could just renovate it, make it more modern, bring it up to modern standards, and I think that a lot of fans would be happier with the short track layout at Pocono, which is a 3/4 mile, same size as Richmond, the current layout, instead of the 2.5 mile gigantic super speedway that it always rains at. That's just my opinion. But the future of dirt racing in NASCAR's Cup Series is very bright. Expect quite a few more dirt races next season. Heartbreak for J.J. Yaley. He led 77 laps in the Food City Dirt Race in the 52 car for Rick Ware Racing. It was a great night, really, for Rick Ware, even though 2 of his cars missed it. He had Bobby Pierce running in second for a good majority of the race. J.J. Yaley was out front for, I believe 52% of the race. He was the leader. So it was very unfortunate for Yaley to miss out on the victory by really only 2 corners right there. If the start-finish line would have been on the backstretch, he would have won the race. But Yaley definitely caught a lot of attention with his performance at Bristol. Importantly, from sponsorship. Obviously, the number one candidate for sponsorship is Jacob Companies. They've sponsored RWR for years, and they're going to continue that partnership, so maybe they can throw some more money towards JJ. But also, Yaley has allegedly caught the interest of Marcus Lemonis, CEO of Camping World and all those companies, Overton's, Gander Outdoors, quite a few companies, Good Sam. Apparently, Yaley has absolutely intrigued Marcus Lemonis on a sponsorship deal. So we might need to expect J.J. Yaley running around in those beautiful blue and yellow Camping World cars very soon. I wouldn't quite doubt it. And Yaley is deserving of some sort of sponsorship. Yaley, this is the closest he's come to victory, and he honestly deserved the win, leading 77 out of 150 laps. But this is not the last of J.J. Yaley. Believe me, as crazy as that may sound, everybody thought his career was over in 2008 when he was signed to drive the 96 for Hall of Fame Racing after he was released by Joe Gibbs. But now that dirt racing's coming back, it looks like we may have 3 dirt races next season. That's 3 opportunities for J.J. Yaley to win in a season. That may sway a team to want JJ at least in their car for those 3 races because he could potentially bring home a win. Just like with the addition of more road courses per year, that has kind of revived A.J. Allmendinger's career. The amount of interest that people have in him. It's even allegedly going to bring Boris Said back. More dirt track races could bring someone like J.J. Yaley back into the front of the field. Because obviously we didn't really expect A.J. Allmendinger to climb his way back after being released from the 47 in 2018. We kind of just thought, well, it's retirement time. Now he comes back with Colleague, and he's racing his way towards the front of the field every week in NASCAR's Xfinity Series. J.J. Yaley could be doing the same very soon through dirt track racing, getting that exposure that he needs, getting up to a better ride than he has right now. It really was a battle for absolutely every single spot on the racetrack over the course of both heats and the feature, mainly due to the inversion and the randomized starting grid for the heats, but mainly the inversion, because all the strong cars made their ways towards the front in the heat races, but then were sent right to the back for the feature. And with only a 150-lap feature, they had to fight their way all the way through the field to get up to the front, and that led to quite a few incidents, cars smacking the wall, people hitting each other. It was a phenomenal event. It's absolutely what you want to see out of dirt track racing, especially with 38 cars on the racetrack. It was a remarkable event, but still, every single car, I swear, bounced off the wall or someone else at least once. Even the race winner, Chase Briscoe, he had left and right side damage. J.J. Yaley, even though he led more than 52% of the race, his car was still damaged. It was a race of attrition, but still, we had about 30 cars finish the race, which was more than I initially anticipated. I thought it was going to be more like 20. But the drivers showed a lot of reserve when it comes to fully wrecking, but they did not show any reserve when it came to that outside wall, because they always hit it on the exit of Turn 4 and Turn 2, trying to make the most of that cushion that was very tacky over the course of the heat races and the feature event itself. Chase Briscoe, after winning by 15 one-thousandths of a second above Yaley, is now the second driver to 2 wins on the season, and the only driver to win on both surfaces at Bristol Motor Speedway in Cup Series history. Ironically enough, he accomplished that feat in only 2 starts at the racetrack. Last year, as a rookie, he took on Bristol on the concrete for the first time and won the thing. This season, second-year driver, takes on the dirt for the first time with everybody else because, this was an inaugural event, still wins it. So it doesn't look like Briscoe is going to be slowing down at Bristol Motor Speedway anytime soon, does it? Tough luck for Brad Keselowski, another fellow Chevrolet driver. Unlike, Briscoe, who took home the victory, Keselowski missed another race through heat races. As you recall, he got involved in that drama with Denny Hamlin and missed at Louisville. This time, at least, he didn't get into some kind of fight from DNQing, but he still didn't make the race. Although, with limited dirt racing experience, I'm pretty sure he'll rebound with Pocono coming up. A racetrack that he's won at before. He's a champion of our sport. He's got a lot of experience on, asphalt racing. I'm sure that the 88 car is going to bounce back after this as well. It just seems like the new racetracks Brad Keselowski has a very hard time adapting to, in particular Bristol Dirt, because it's just not his background. But even Louisville, he was not running very far up towards the front of the field. Him and Hamlin were really battling for that final transfer position. So it just seems like every new track to him is kind of a struggle this season. I think that's kind of been what's holding the 88 car back, is maybe they're relying too much on Brad's experience and not opening their minds to the new tracks that we've brought into the schedule this season, because it seems like that's where they keep getting beat, is at the new facilities. They're not up to par with the rest of the teams when it comes to adapting to all the changes that NASCAR keeps throwing at our teams and our drivers, which is what keeps it interesting, but it just seems like Keselowski isn't adapting to it. Neither is his crew chief, Cliff Daniels, at this current moment. However, a Hendrick driver who is adapting to these changes is the 24 team of William Byron. Again, they showed remarkable speed early in the race. They even won heat number 1 above Tyler Reddick, who is a proven dirt track racer. Now, unfortunately, the 24 team got involved in some trouble. They fell a couple laps down in the feature, but they had legitimate speed to begin the heat race and the feature event itself. So it looks like Byron, crew chief Rudy Fugel, they're on their march right towards the front of the field, even knowing this was a bit of a hiccup, not getting the finishing result that they wanted. But before this, they were on a streak of 3 consecutive top 10s, winning heat number 1. That team has got something figured out. I know that it didn't work out in their favor at the end of the feature, but coming into Pocono, a racetrack that Byron has showed rather decent success at before, and with the high downforce package that Byron has won with in NASCAR's Xfinity Series, you might need to keep your eyes on the 24 car of William Byron. I certainly wasn't expecting him to beat out Reddick in heat number 1 at Bristol. So that Fugel-Byron combination starting to gel. That 24 team might be in victory lane rather soon. Nemechek, as a substitute driver for Kyle Busch, who got involved in that incident in the Pinty's truck race on dirt with Ryan Unziker. Even knowing it was a dirt race, John Hunter ran remarkably well. Was going to get a top 5 finish had he not smacked the wall on the exit of turn 4 on the last lap, dropped down to 6th position. But you might expect John Hunter Nemechek to make a couple more starts this season in the Cup Series. Obviously, it wouldn't be in the 18 car for Joe Gibbs Racing unless Kyle Busch gets suspended again, and I doubt that happening. Kyle's probably going to learn his lesson after this one. But 2311 Racing has been eyeballing him as the driver of their second car, the 45 car that Friesen almost won with at the Bristol Dirt Track. Obviously, they had been eyeballing Nemechek before the whole Kyle Busch incident happened, but now, even knowing it was a dirt race, you can say that maybe that won't, play into the asphalt races, but Nemechek has limited dirt experience coming into this. So, really, it was just a good showing for John Hunter, and it's definitely attracting him to the number 45 team to try and run that second entry for a couple races later on in this season. Because obviously getting 6th position at Bristol Dirt Track, it was a big statement. If they can improve on that a couple more spots, they can get a top 5, 3rd place. If you can keep getting that momentum going, you could end up in victory circle. However, 2311 needs a little bit more development, in my opinion, to be able to win a race. Obviously the Bristol Dirt Track was a big enough wild card to where Friesen could have done it had he not gotten in trouble with the 61 car of Christopher Bell. But that 23 and 45 team, it's still a brand new organization. They haven't quite found the speed elsewhere. On your traditional racetracks that we run at, they have not showed any speed at an intermediate or short track really so far. The road course program's kind of lacking. They're having kind of some struggles getting towards the front of the field. Driver experience is what led to Friesen running up front at Bristol, but they've got a lot of work to do. But I still think that John Hunter in their 45 car could probably give them a half-decent finish if he got into that equipment right now at, say, a track like Kansas or something like that. But really, they have to focus on the 23 car of Bubba Wallace. They have to get that car out front before they really should be concerned with getting John Hunter Nemechek up to speed in their second car. Dirt Ringers had an absolutely great night. Shane Golobic and Michael Sell finishing top 10 in their Cup Series debuts. You don't often see that when 2 drivers making their first start finish in the top 10, along with Dave Blaney, Bobby Pierce, Ben Rhodes, and Ken Schrader, who had great runs going on over the course of the night, but unfortunately their great pace was nullified by getting involved in accidents that were not of their causing. I feel probably the worst for Dave Blaney and Ken Schrader, because, you never really know when your final Cup Series start is going to come. Schrader came into this race calling it his final start, but I have that feeling that competitor in him is going to keep him wanting to come back and have a shot at least taking a checkered flag, because Schrader didn't take the checkered flag of the Food City Dirt Race, and I feel that Schrader wants to end his career finishing the race. I don't think that he wants to end his career in a Cup Series garage. I think he wants to end it somewhere near victory circle at the very least. And I definitely feel for Stuart Friesen. He was another dirt ringer who had a fantastic night going. Unfortunately, got into the lap car of Christopher Bell right there. I don't really think there was any fault of either driver. Bell was coming off pit road running his own line. 45 was actually trying to dive bomb the corner to get underneath the 53 of Briscoe and try to force Briscoe up the racetrack, but just made contact with the 61 enough to give the 45 car bad enough damage to have to come down pit road and get the car repaired. And by that point, he was about 2 laps down. It completely removed his chances of winning the race. And it's just a shame for Friesen after having such a great run, and it just would have been very huge for him to take home both inaugural NASCAR races at the Bristol Motor Speedway dirt track. But I can guarantee you, after a performance that good, almost won the race, led a couple laps, Stuart Friesen's going to be back in a Cup car next year at Bristol. I can almost guarantee you that. Whether or not it be with 2311, we don't really know. Odds are 4-car limit's going to be removed next year. Maybe it'll be a Gibbs car. Who really knows right now? Stuart could enter his own entry if he really wants to. But Stuart Friesen has the ability to win a Cup Series race. That's what he proved at the Bristol Motor Speedway dirt track. All Stuart Friesen needs is luck to play into his favor this time around. Also, a very large statement out of Spire Motorsports and Justin Haley. Coming off several terrible weeks, they finished top 10 on a dirt track, which was absolutely not expected out of that organization. He was even involved in a couple incidents at Bristol. Even was turned around in the last 30 or so laps of the race, but it did not stop him from being competitive, finished in a top 10 running position. It's a great rebound for that organization. They needed some momentum coming off of the last 3 weeks, which they were always involved in some accident that completely knocked them off of even top 20 finishing pace. So it's a good story for Colleague Racing and for Spire Motorsports. Obviously, they run that car in a partnership. To get Justin Haley some track time in a competitive car that is not put up into the outside wall by someone else by lap 7. So it was just good for Haley to have some experience running at the front of the field, and maybe they can carry some of that momentum into getting some consistent top 20 finishes in the coming races, especially with the high downforce package being ran at Pocono and Indy. Might be able to expect him to manipulate some of the draft and get up towards the front, because we know very well that Justin Haley is a very accomplished super speedway driver. Even though Pocono and Indianapolis are not shaped like traditional super speedways that I'm referring to, like Daytona or Talladega, we are running the super speedway downforce package, and it's going to turn into a race where you have to work with and manipulate the packs to try and get up front and maintain your lead and also stay out of trouble. And now this is an officiating decision from NASCAR. Kyle Busch will be suspended for the next 2 races, both Pocono races, the doubleheader weekend, and he will be placed on probation for the remainder of the 2021 season. Now, Kyle Busch will be back in the number 18 car at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway for the Brickyard 400. We know that. Gibbs is at least letting him back. What won't be represented on his car is M&M's. Just like what happened back in 2011 when he wrecked Hornaday at Texas, the sponsorship deal has been suspended. Now, what this means for the future of Joe Gibbs Racing or even Kyle Busch, I'm really not sure. Kyle, you have to remember, is the defending champion of our sport. He's a 2-time Cup Series champion already and the winningest active driver in the field. However, his behavior has gotten him in trouble numerous times in the last even month. This is what led to this 3-race suspension. So, losing your primary sponsorship, at least for now, obviously they could get that deal rectified in the coming months. But right now, Mars is not too satisfied with Kyle Busch as their representative, given the fact that this is their second strike in 10 years. Obviously, the first one was Ron Hornaday. But this is not exactly a very good situation for Kyle Busch to be in. Even though he won the race at Texas Motor Speedway earlier in the season in the Interstate Batteries Toyota, this time around he's going to be losing quite a bit of regular season points. Obviously missed the Food City Dirt Race due to suspension. He will also miss 2 consecutive races at Pocono. It's not quite like the hit he took in 2015, still won the championship, missing 11 races and still pulling it off. That wouldn't be possible with our modern format of playoff points either. However, I digress. He will be losing quite a bit of points, likely taken out of contention of winning the regular season championship. Kyle, if he can stay in the top 30 of regular season points, however, will have a shot at contending for the championship at Darlington with his automatic advancement from his win at Texas. The replacement for Kyle Busch in the number 18 car for Joe Gibbs Racing, Ty Gibbs. And I am not making this up. It is Joe Gibbs' grandson to drive the number 18 Monster Energy Camry at both NASCAR Cup Series races at Pocono Raceway. Now, the kid's kind of fresh out of ARCA, but he already scored a NASCAR Xfinity Series win at Palm Beach International Raceway earlier on in the season. That was only his first NASCAR Xfinity Series start. So, given the fact that Gibbs has been cleared to run the Cup Series races, you may need to watch out for Ty at Pocono. He's going to be going for a quintuple header running ARCA, Truck, Xfinity, and both Cup races. So he's definitely going to be busy at Pocono Raceway and could potentially take a record off of Kyle Busch. As you recall, Kyle holds the record of most National Series wins in one weekend, that being 3 at Bristol. He did that twice. If Ty can score a win in the Truck, Xfinity, and both Cup races, that will be 4 National Series wins on one weekend, not to mention the ARCA race, which could add to a very nice 5 victories in one weekend. Do I expect it to happen? No, I don't. Just luck alone will likely keep it from happening. But could it happen? Absolutely. A Pocono Grand Slam, if you will, for Ty Gibbs. It'd be interesting to see if he could pull it off. And I'll say this. I definitely expect Gibbs to have a good run in the 18 car. Given the fact that we're running the Super Speedway package this weekend at Pocono, the 9-inch spoiler with the 1-inch 90-degree lip on the end, it kind of looks like this when it's standing straight up. It has that lip that goes forward, much like the Super Speedway package we ran from 2000 to 2002. It has the lip over the spoiler, except our spoilers now are much taller. We're going to be running that package at Pocono with the 550 tapered spacer. So it's a combination of the Speedway and Super Speedway packages. It should play into Ty Gibbs' hands a little bit better because the cars will handle a little bit more like what you'd expect out of an ARCA car with the less horsepower, more downforce. So it may benefit Ty Gibbs a little bit more because it's not quite a race like, say, Phoenix, where we had very soft tires that could wear out quite a bit, almost no downforce whatsoever on the car, that 2 3/4-inch spoiler, which really doesn't do much. You might as well cut the thing off. It does something, but really not that much. But this will definitely benefit Gibbs a little bit more than running, say, that race because it's more similar to what he has driven in his career up to this point. So still, I would expect Ty Gibbs, if he can keep the nose clean on the 18 car, to probably finish top 15 in his Cup Series debut. He's very young, but this would be a very similar development path to what Joe Gibbs put Joey Logano through. And given the fact that it's his grandson, it might be a little bit easier to bring him through that path, give him partners and connections quicker and much sooner than you would expect out of someone like, say, Logano when he was progressing through Joe Gibbs Racing back in 2009 when he got up to the top level of NASCAR National Series Racing, the Cup Series, in 2009 to replace Tony Stewart. So really, this is not the first time that Joe Gibbs Racing has brought in a very, very young driver to the Cup level to drive for them. And this time it's just a substitute driver for Kyle Busch. But still, I would expect Ty Gibbs to pull off a pretty good performance at Pocono Raceway. Ricky Stenhouse Jr., as you recall, his horrific tumble down the back straightaway in stage number 3 of the Food City Dirt Race. He was taken to Holston Valley Medical Center, a nearby hospital to Bristol Motor Speedway. Following the rollovers, as you recall, it was very, very fast how he flipped upside down, side over side. It was very similar to Ricky Rudd's wreck at Daytona back in the early to mid-1980s, and also Davey Allison's wreck at Pocono in the early 1990s because of how fast the car spun while it was flipping. Obviously, that's not something that you can keep from being dangerous. The Hans device keeps those whiplash-style wrecks from hurting the driver quite as much. But when you're barrel rolling, there's fluid inside your cranium that your brain sets in that keeps it from hitting the skull itself. When you're flipping that violently, I don't care how good of a safety device you can develop, it's really not going to keep the brain from moving around unless you somehow produce some kind of implant that goes in. Unless you can, figure out that kind of magic science, you're never really going to prevent these injuries from happening. You can soften their impact, like what we have currently with, the Hans device, but it's not going to keep something like this from being a problem. So the current word on Ricky Stenhouse Jr. is that he's suffering from concussion-like symptoms. He was kept overnight at the hospital. He is, in fact, conscious. No real severe injuries on him, but it's very similar to what Alex Bowman was suffering last year after his wreck at Daytona. What I meant by G-force sickness in the broadcast, as well as the inflammation that you get from being in a high G-force environment, like what Stenhouse was in from his barrel rolling. Very interesting, by the way, that you see in like a sprint car race, something like that, if a car gets upside down, it barrel rolls very violently in dirt racing. It's a little strange when you think about it that we had that in the Cup Series race. Maybe it was too similar to a dirt race in general. But Stenhouse most likely will not be good to make the race at Pocono. Could potentially be healed up in time for Indianapolis. He is okay. He has just some concussion-like symptoms. We don't know how this is obviously going to affect his career later on. None of us knew that Earnhardt Jr. was hurt. None of us knew that Ricky Craven was hurt until, those symptoms came back a good 10, 15 years after the initial injury. However, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. will likely be healed in time for Indianapolis. Most likely will have to sit out of the doubleheader at Pocono Raceway. It looks like right now the driver who will be in place of Ricky Stenhouse Jr. in the 47 is a familiar face at JTG Doherty Racing. Looks like they're going to go with A.J. Allmendinger to drive the 47. As you know, he drove for JTG for a number of years, won them their first Cup Series race back in 2014 at Watkins Glen. AJ will most likely be back in the car if Stenhouse cannot make it to Pocono Raceway, if he is not cleared by NASCAR to run the event. So AJ will most likely get the car for both races. I would expect him to run fairly well. As I mentioned earlier, he's gotten a lot better in the most recent few seasons, gotten a lot better at super speedway racing, speedways in general. The super speedway high downforce package is going to be utilized at Pocono, so that might be a bit more of an equalizer as well for the 47 car itself, because they can stay in the draft and stay up with maybe some of the better funded race cars, and maybe keep AJ in the hunt for a top 10 somewhere around there. Our thoughts go to Stenhouse. He'll be back likely within the next month at the very least. So Ricky will definitely make a comeback later on this month. Whether it be at Indianapolis or the race after that, we're not exactly sure right now. But fortunately, the injuries after such a horrific accident are not too severe. Some concussion-like symptoms for the driver of the 47 car, but much like Alex Bowman last season, he will likely be back in at least a race or two. And so now, folks, the time has come for the reveal of the rebirth of stock. Here we are at the world-famous Daytona Beach and Road Course, where it all began. New car, new technology, and an emphasis on innovation. Toyota brings back their flagship sedan, the Toyota Camry XSE for 2022. Chevrolet will be utilizing their highly competitive Camaro ZL1 1LE Coupe for the 2022 NASCAR Cup Series season. Finally, Ford will debut a new car for the 2022 season, the Mustang GT500. A car built symmetrically, using modern passenger car technology with the intention of bringing the action to all track types. NASCAR races into the future in 2022. Folks, I hope that you are as excited about this next generation car as I am. It even has the potential of being electrified in the next few seasons to keep up with modern passenger automobile technology so that we can stay as a stock car series. I believe that we really did deviate from what we were trying to get at, being a stock car racing division. NASCAR, the way it is set up, the technology that goes into these race cars is supposed to go back in some way or another back to the passenger car. And we're supposed to be developing future technologies for passenger automobiles. Recently, in the last 20 years, quite frankly, it's been going backwards. They develop stuff for the road cars so we can put it in our race cars. We put in fuel injection in 2012 when the Cadillac had it in the mid-50s. So we were pretty far behind, but hopefully this next-gen car will be a step in the right direction, both on the technology and engineering standpoints, but also in the racing aspect as well, and that's really why we're here. It's an entertainment sport, and if we can't sell the racing, then we don't have a sport. Also, multi-car next-generation testing will begin effective immediately. Starting this weekend at Pocono Raceway, there will be 4 cars testing on the racetrack, all 4 from Chip Ganassi Racing. Obviously, the organizations have been building these cars long before they were revealed to the public, because the organizations were a crucial factor in getting this car developed. So Ganassi will field 4 cars for their drivers, plus Matt Kenseth. As you recall, he wrecked out at Pocono Raceway, which effectively ended his full-time NASCAR Cup Series career last season. He will be testing the car, not to mention that he is a Cup Series champion and 2-time Daytona 500 winner, so he will be able to supply the organization with good feedback on how to set up these race cars and what they need to do to make them feel comfortable. So get ready for the first time that we get to see the next generation car in a group of 4 in particular, most likely to run the Super Speedway downforce package as well, just like what we are running for this weekend's Cup Series races on the Generation 6 car. Obviously, as the year goes on, we will test different aero packages at different racetracks. I would expect IMS, Indianapolis Motor Speedway, will be a crucial testing facility as well for the next-gen car. And so now, after just a quick commercial break, we'll be back right here on Post Tech to give the highlights of the Pocono Organics 150 from Pocono Raceway in the NASCAR Camping World Truck Series. We'll see you then. NASCAR on Speed Station is being brought to you by RFJ, the official home of the RFJ AI Series. By Knife Friend 725, the brains behind Project Retroval. And by Anthony's Online Simulation League. Welcome back to Post Tech. Before we get on to the highlights, gotta give you the race analysis. The race took place over the course of 60 laps around the 2.5-mile tri-oval out in Pocono, Pennsylvania. Stage number 1 ended on lap 15, and stage 2 ended on lap 30. So that meant that stages 1 and 2 were split up into quarters, final stage being a half of the full race distance. You will likely have to make at least 1 pit stop in the final stage unless we get more than 2 cautions. Only then can you save enough gas to get to the end of the race without having to come down pit road at least once for a splash of fuel. And so now let's christen this race with our intros. In your regular season point standings, coming into Pocono Raceway, Sheldon Creed holds the top spot in the standings by 16 points above Casey Mears, the winner at Daytona earlier in the season. Behind Mears is his teammate Ty Dillon, who dropped down to 3rd in points after the Bristol Dirt Race. He is now 25 points out of the point lead. Ty Gibbs is 29 points out. He will be attempting his first career Cup Series start on Saturday. Matt Crafton, 32 points out of the point lead. Dawson Cram sets 35 points out of the point lead. Grant Enfinger, 45 points out. Brett Holmes, defending ARCA Menard Series champion, is 62 points out. Christian Eckes is 64 points out. And tied with John Hunter Nemechek, with Eckes getting the tiebreaker with his win at Auto Club Speedway. Stuart Friesen picked up right where he left off at the Bristol Motor Speedway dirt track, taking home the pole here at Pocono Raceway. Cup Series ringer and winner in the NASCAR Cup Series at Pocono Raceway last season, Brandon Jones qualified the 51 truck for KBM outside pole. 24 truck of Raphael Lessard qualified in 8th position. 30 truck of Brendan Poole qualified in 10th spot. 5 truck of Dalton Sargent, making his first start in a number of years in the number 5 for Phoenix Racing, qualified in 14th position. Another returning driver is the number 53 truck of Cameron Haley, qualifying in 18th spot. And speaking of returning drivers, how about 2012 Camping World Truck Series champion James Busher in the 44 truck for Nice Motorsports, qualifying in 19th. 14 truck of Sam Mayer qualified in 21st position. 45 of Bailey Curry qualified in 23rd spot. Number 3 truck of Myatt Snyder qualified in 26th position. Casey Mears qualified the 60 truck in 27th position. He comes into this race second in the standings. However, the point leader, Sheldon Creed, qualified the number 2 truck for GMS Racing in 33rd position. Justin Carroll actually made the race in the number 91 truck in 35th spot. The number 41 truck of Dawson Cram just barely made the field in last position, starting in 42nd. Stuart Friesen in the number 52 truck got the jump on the start and actually managed to clear the number 51 of Brandon Jones in the run down to turn number 1 as the field fans out on the very wide, almost airport-like front straightaway. However, we had trouble in the run down to turn number 1. 42 truck of Carson Hocevar goes up to side draft the 21 of Zane Smith. Turns Smith around into turn number 1 and up into his teammate, Brett Holmes, bringing out the caution flag on lap number 1. On the restart, we had a battle for second position between Brent Enfinger and the 51 truck of Brandon Jones, with Jones getting the advantage on the Long Pond straightaway with a push coming from the 88 truck of Matt Crafton. But then at the end of lap number 6, out of the tunnel turn, the 31 truck pushes up the racetrack, clips the 45 hard into the inside wall, bringing out the caution flag for the second time with a very hard hit into the inside retaining wall for the 45 truck of Bailey Curry, knocking him out of the race. Here's just another angle of how the 45 truck hit the inside wall. If that was not a safer barrier, that would have been a very rough impact. And the 31 truck actually almost caught the opening of the wall right there. That also would have been a very bad incident. On the restart, Grant Enfinger tried to make it 3 wide on the inside, going for second position. Off the 51 truck of Brandon Jones, Crafton holds the momentum through the middle to take up the second position. Dirty air was a very big issue throughout the entirety of the race here at Pocono Raceway. It was very easy for a truck up on the outside to pinch a truck down on the bottom and keep you from passing. So Crafton had to force it in 3 wide through the middle to force both the inside and outside lane drivers to back off, giving him the second spot. And here's exactly proof of how you can hold a truck down on the bottom. Lap 12, we have a battle side by side for the top spot. Crafton to the inside, the 52 truck of Stuart Friesen. We'll look at Friesen get the grip up on the exit of turn number 1, right up on the high lane. And once again, clear the 88 truck of Matt Crafton down the Long Pond straightaway. 51 truck of Brandon Jones even tried to dive bomb down into the tunnel turn and made some contact with the left rear quarter panel of the 88 truck, but still Friesen powered by up on the outside. Also on lap number 12, the 38 truck of Todd Gillen makes contact with the 98 of Grant Enfinger, Jeremy Mayfield style, through turn 3 and forces the 98 truck up the racetrack, but couldn't quite do it as the 98 truck got to the power sooner on the exit of turn number 3. It's also important to note with Grant Enfinger taking up the 4th position, TRD now holds the top 4 spots with Brandon Jones taking up 2nd. Up on the outside, the 88 truck of Crafton. Then guess what? Entering turn number 1, 51 truck gets down to the inside, the 52. Side-by-side battle for the lead between Jones and the 52 of Friesen, but then Crafton jumps up to the outside, pushes the 52 truck past the 51 of Brandon Jones, uses the high line through the tunnel turn, and Crafton retakes the 2nd position. On the last lap of stage number 1, Matt Crafton takes a look down to the inside of the 52 truck entering turn number 1. But this time, Crafton has some drafting help down on his inside, that being the 51 truck of Brandon Jones. They duel side by side down the Long Pond straightaway. 88 truck just barely inching ahead. Now entering the tunnel turn, the 98 truck of Enfinger slides into 3rd position. Crafton and Friesen still side by side. Enfinger goes up to the outside to help the 52. Now into the final turn, and the race back to the green and white checkered flag for stage number 1. 88 truck on the inside, 52 up on the outside. Drag race back to the start-finish line, and stage 1 goes to Crafton in a photo finish back to the stripe. Matt Crafton takes home the stage number 1 victory above Stuart Friesen by 8 1/1000ths of a second, with Enfinger taking home the 3rd position, Jones in 4th, and 5th, Raphael Lassard. Also on the final lap of the stage, the 14 truck of Sam Mayer is racing with both Phoenix Racing trucks. Parsons moves up and makes contact with the 14, down into the 5 of Sargent. Mayer gets up into the outside wall and then slides down in front of traffic, gets hit by the 11 truck of Spencer Davis, causing very significant damage to the 14 truck of Sam Mayer, unfortunately knocking him out of the race. And here's the onboard with Spencer Davis. Just absolutely had nowhere to go to avoid the 14 truck. On the restart on lap number 20, the 51 truck of Brandon Jones jumps to the outside of the 98 of Grant Enfinger on the exit of turn number 1. Drag races down the Long Pond straightaway and takes up the 3rd position in the 51 truck for KBM. Lap 21, the 24 truck of Raphael Lassard gets in line behind the 51 of Brandon Jones and freight trains their way around the 98 truck of Enfinger. with Lassard taking up the 4th position. As you can tell, Friesen was able to close the gap right up to the 88 truck of Crafton, but every single time Matt Crafton was able to power past him on the exit of the corners using a higher lane. Then entering turn number 2, 51 truck looks to the inside of 52. 24 tries to send it 3 wide into the tunnel turn, but backs out after getting his left sides on the apron, with Friesen still holding the 2nd position. Also, the 98 truck of Grant Enfinger made his way around the 24 truck of Raphael Lassard that time by to take up the 4th position. Brandon Jones tried to take up 2nd off of Friesen, and the move did not work, with Friesen holding 2nd and the 51 truck dropping back, which started this large gaggle of trucks fighting for 3rd spot, with the 98 truck of Enfinger trying to send it in on the outside, 24 on the inside, and 51 going through the middle. On the exit of turn number 1, they were still running in a 3-wide group, with the 51 truck of Brandon Jones getting the advantage to retake the 3rd position. Lap 26, the number 53 truck of Cameron Haley has a tire going down on the front straightaway. Coming into turn number 1, the 15 and 44 trucks of Busher and Tanner Gray collide, turning the number 44 truck around right up in front of the field, almost taking out the 2nd place runner in point standings, carrying the 44 up into the wall. Then he gets hit by Dalton Sargent, unfortunately knocking Sargent out of the race, and carried also the 15 truck of Tanner Gray up into the wall as well. But what this meant for Cameron Haley is he came down pit road this time by to put on tires, which is actually a strategic advantage. The caution involving James Busher and Dalton Sargent has brought the end of stage number 2. Matt Crafton will sweep both stages here at Pocono above the 52 truck of Friesen, 98 of Enfinger, 51 of Brandon Jones, and 30 of Brendan Poole, with a great run going so far for On Point, a Toyota-controlled top 5. Lap 28, race leader Matt Crafton leads the entire field onto the pit road. And guess what? Because the 53 truck of Haley has already been down pit road, he did not have to come down pit road this time by, so he will cycle out in 3rd position. The only 2 trucks who got out in front of him are Matt Crafton and Stuart Friesen. So an incredible strategic benefit for the 53 truck. A flat tire was, and that's all because that incident down to turn number 1 happened the very same lap, but it gave the 53 truck a perfectly timed caution to come down pit road early and technically short pit the field. Now your top 5 is Crafton above Friesen, Cameron Haley, 98 of Grant Enfinger, and 30 truck of Brennan Poole. 51 of Brandon Jones dropped down about 4 spots on pit road. On lap 30, the number 8 truck of Camden Murphy blows up under caution, knocking the 8 truck for Nemco Motorsports out of the race. And guess what? The poor pit stop for the 51 team ended up getting them in trouble. Right on the restart, 51 truck gets put into the middle by Austin Hill and Raphael Lassard. Contact between the 24 and 51 into the tunnel turn, carrying the 51 truck of Brandon Jones into the outside wall. Then the 13 truck of Sauter has nowhere to go, plows into the 55 truck, who got in to the number 24. But then as the 55 and 13 trucks slide down across the racetrack, more trucks get involved, with the 23 of Holmes involved, 11 of Spencer Davis, and 92 of Austin Terrio. Even the 51 truck of Brandon Jones got more damage out of this. So a very large accident in between turns 2 and 3. The full list of trucks that are now out of the race include Spencer Davis, Ty Majeski, Austin Terrio, Brandon Jones, and Brett Holmes. Then on the restart, we had yet another incident down to turn number 1. Michael Self tried to make the racetrack just a little bit too narrow on the front stretch. Didn't give the 38 truck of Todd Gilliland enough room. Slides up into the 38, gets turned up into the 26 of Chase Purdy, and up into the outside wall. Self into the wall with the 38 truck of Todd Gilliland. Pretty significant damage on the rear end of the 25 in particular. And we also had a battle back to the start-finish line for the race lead. 52 truck of Friesen to the inside, the 88 truck of Crafton. But Friesen gets a little bit loose as he might have gotten his left front tire into the dirt just a little bit. That allowed Crafton to take the lead once again. And the 53 truck of Cameron Haley to take up second back down to the start-finish line. Believe it or not, after these several incidents that we've had in today's race, there is now only 31 trucks running out of 42 starters. By lap 45, the number 30 truck of Brendan Pools raced his way up into fourth, and he goes down to help the 52 truck of Stuart Friesen, who gets to the inside of the 53 of Cameron Haley. So the two Toyotas of Poole and Friesen push their way past the 53 of Cameron Haley down the Long Pond straightaway, allowing Friesen to once again take up second. In the same move, the 30 truck of Brendan Poole takes up the third position, with the 53 dropping down into fourth. It's important to note that by lap number 46, the 18 truck of Ty Gibbs actually raced his way into the top 10. Now side by side with Ryan Truex for ninth. Stuart Friesen gets pinched down in the tunnel turn by the 30 truck of Brendan Poole, allowing Poole to take up second for On Point Motorsports. Then Friesen got held down on the bottom of turn number 3, dropping the 52 truck down to fourth, with Haley back up into third. As you can tell, the number 88 team for ThorSport has really gotten the setup figured out around here at Pocono and how to manipulate the field, because watch this right here. Crafton through the tunnel turn, holds the 30 truck down, and clears him on the exit, up on the outside lane. And dirty air has been a very big problem in the Camping World Truck Series here at this facility, and has allowed Matt Crafton to keep his truck out front even when he may not be the fastest truck on the racetrack. Then lap 48, trouble for the points leader as the 2 truck gets squeezed up into the outside wall with the 87 of Timothy Peters, with pretty significant left side damage on Sheldon Creed. The number 30 truck of Brendan Poole got the jump on the restart to get side by side with the 88 of Matt Crafton down into turn number 1. Once again, Crafton was able to hold that 30 truck down in a lane where he just could not get the drive off, and Crafton clears the 30 truck of Brendan Poole down the Long Pond straightaway. On lap 55, the 16 truck of Austin Hill drafts with the 53 of Cameron Haley, and that allows Hill to take up the fourth position, getting around the 52 truck of Stuart Friesen. Then on lap 57, the 52 truck of Friesen gets to the outside, the 16 of Hill. The 40 of Will Rogers goes 3 wide down to turn number 1. 16 slides up into the 52, then the 40 slides up into the 16, just barely. Contact between pretty much every single truck involved in this battle, with the 16 truck holding the advantage for the moment. Friesen's going to be able to hold him down on the bottom, entering turn number 2. Nearly making contact down the Long Pond straightaway, once again bumping into each other through the tunnel turn, and Friesen, with help from Grant Enfinger, will retake the 4th position out of the 2nd turn. Brendan Poole gets the run on race leader Matt Crafton entering turn number 2, gets back down to the inside, but once again, just can't do anything with it, as Crafton closes the door in the tunnel turn. With just 2 laps to go, Stuart Friesen shows his frustrations with the 53 truck of Cameron Haley, bumps him on entry, and tries to spin him around on the exit of the tunnel turn, but still Haley held on to the 53 truck. The 30 truck of Brendan Poole was back by about 0.3 of a second, with Matt Crafton cruising to victory lane out of the 3rd turn. Matt Crafton onto the very wide front straightaway wins the Pocono Organics 150 from Pocono Raceway. His 2nd win of the 2021 season. Takes home the victory above the number 30 truck of Brendan Poole, who got a fantastic 2nd place finish. Might be a sign of things to come for On Point Motorsports. Also, the 53 of Cameron Haley held on to finish 3rd above the 52 of Stuart Friesen. Ty Gibbs, who will be making his first Cup Series start on Saturday, brought the 18 truck home in 8th position. In your regular season point standings following the race here from Pocono, Sheldon Creed still remains on top of the point standings by just now 4 points above Matt Crafton. Obviously, Sheldon Creed got into trouble here at Pocono, getting up into the outside wall, entering turn number 1 with about 12 laps to go. That has brought the point gap down to just 4 points. And Matt Crafton is really on a hot streak right now, led 46 laps of the race here at Pocono, taking home a dominating win, and his 2nd win of the year. As you recall, earlier in the season, he won at Dover International Speedway. Climbs up 3 spots in the standings to 2nd, and it looks like the way things are going, he may be the point leader by the end of next weekend. Ty Gibbs has moved up to 3rd in the point standings in the 18 truck for KBM. He is now 12 points out of the point lead. As you can tell, it's a remarkably close battle in the standings. The top 19 runners are within 100 points. Casey Mears dropped down 2 spots in the standings, following Pocono to 4th. He is 17 points out of the lead. Dawson Cram picked up 1 spot in the standings to 5th. He is 21 points out of the point lead. Enfinger moves up 1 spot in the standings to 6th, 25 points back. Ty Dillon loses an additional 4 spots in the standings, wrecking out with the 45 truck of Bailey Curry. He drops down to 7th, 36 points out of the point lead. John Hunter Nemechek in the 4 truck for KBM moves up 2 spots in the standings to 8th position. He is 49 points out of the point lead. Eckes stays in 9th, 52 points back, and Ben Rhodes moves up 3 spots in the point standings, 63 points out of the point lead. In your playoff standings, the drivers locked in with wins include Sheldon Creed, Matt Crafton, Austin Hill, Ty Gibbs, Casey Mears, Christian Eckes, Ben Rhodes, Ryan Truex, and Stuart Friesen. Obviously, Crafton was a repeat winner. He already had his automatic playoff berth from Dover. This just helps him along a little bit in regular season point standings with the quest to win the regular season title at Daytona. The best of the rest currently is Dawson Cram, 54 points above the cutoff line, then Enfinger 50, Ty Dillon 39, John Hunter Nemechek 26, Brett Holmes 6 points above, as well as Timothy Peters and Parker Kligerman somehow all tied for that final transfer position right there. Then on the outside looking in is Austin Theriault, who is 6 points out. Ty Majeski is 7 points out, as well as Zane Smith. And then Brennan Poole, after his second place finish here at Pocono, currently resides 16 points out of making the playoffs. And so now, after just a quick commercial break, we'll be back right here on Post Tech for my personal favorite segment of the show, Q&A. NASCAR on Speed Station is being brought to you by RFJ, the official home of the RFJ AI series, by Knife Friend 725, the brains behind Project Retroval, and by Anthony's Online Simulation League. Hello everyone, welcome back to Post Tech. Now we move on to the Q&A segment. Once again, I'm going to give you the disclaimer. If I mispronounce any names or handles, I do apologize, but it is bound to happen. So let's get right into the questions. Number 1 from Todoraki: are there any drivers considering becoming driver owners? So right now, there's 2 drivers atop that list. Obviously, Denny Hamlin already owns an organization, but he doesn't drive for it. So Hamlin, if the deal with JGR goes sour, may move over to his own organization. That's an entirely possible situation with Hamlin. Do I expect it to happen? Not very soon, but once the contract runs up at the 11 team, say, Joe gets really impressed by John Hunter or Ty Gibbs, who will be substituting for Kyle Busch, well, maybe Hamlin could end up going to his own organization to find some real job security, because I don't know, going off the rumors, it seems like everyone wants to get rid of Hamlin at JGR, even knowing he's one of the best drivers they've ever had. Still never won a championship. I think that kind of sways half the decision-making process. But Denny Hamlin is way up on the list of becoming a driver owner in the next couple of seasons. Most likely would be probably the 45 entry, because Bubba is signed to, I believe, a 3-year deal at the moment, either 2 or 3-year deal to drive the 23 car for 2311. They at least wanted to have him for at least 1 year in the next gen car. So Hamlin would likely be in the 45 or take the number 11 with him, but considering that was a J.D. Gibbs number in football, I don't expect that to be a Denny Hamlin number. I just think that that's part of the name of the team. I don't think that they're ever going to run a car number 11 unless Joe Gibbs flat out gets out of the sport. So the other driver who's also considering becoming a driver owner is the Rocket Man, Ryan Newman. He's considering, once he decides to go into semi-retirement or potentially just stay full-time, buying out the number 6 car at Roush Fenway. Now, this wouldn't be like buying in. This would be just taking that car off of Jack Roush. Obviously, Ryan is getting involved in team ownership with Brad Means to run the 39 truck in the Camping World Truck Series. They did that at Bristol. They had a pretty good run going before they got up involved in some outside wall incidents in the Pinty's truck race on dirt. But Ryan Newman, I could expect buying half of RFR, Roush Fenway Racing, and trying to start his own organization with it. We've all talked about how Roush Fenway has a hard time fielding 2 cars competitively. Well, maybe they would just field the 1 car, the 17 or the 6, most likely the 6 because that's Jack Roush's number. The 17 car would just go away. It would still be Buescher driving it, but it would just be the number 6. And then Ryan Newman could potentially own the 39, which is his personal number, and it would be a Cup Series entry. Almost certainly Ford, but he would be taking up half of Roush Fenway Racing. It wouldn't be part of Roush Fenway Racing, but he would be buying half the team, if that makes any sense. Just buying out that organization, which is a part of Roush Fenway Racing. So right now, Hamlin and Ryan Newman, top of the list of becoming driver owners. Now from Switchblade, 2 questions. Will Clint Bowyer run any races next season on a part-time basis for Stuart Evernham? Looks like right now Bowyer is at least going to run 2 races. Daytona 500 because he missed it this season, and also the Bristol Dirt Race because he missed that as well. I think that Bowyer wants to come back and run the races that he was not able to run. And considering that he missed the Daytona 500, which is, the biggest race we run in a season, I think Bowyer wants one last good shot at taking home the victory in the 500. Being a champion, you might wonder, well, what else does he have to prove? But I think he wants to go out a little bit better than Tony Stewart. Even though he'll never catch the 3 championships, he could at least be a champion and a Daytona 500 winner along with it. He also wants to run the Bristol Dirt Race because, obviously, he came from a dirt late model racing background. We all thought he was going to have a great run at Bristol, but really, in my opinion, the SHR cars just could not find a setup that was appropriate for a dirt race. I just don't think, their notebook isn't that deep on this sort of, dirt racing. They weren't exactly ready for it, and it just kind of ended up biting them with having quite a few cars miss the show, and most unfortunately probably for Clinton Bowyer, all the SHR cars were pretty quiet. That's because Harvick plowed that wall on lap number 9, the attenuator wall on the backstretch. So really, none of the SHR cars ran good, but Clint Bowyer will almost certainly be back for at least the Bristol Dirt Race next season. He may opt out of the 500 due to safety concerns, but, Bowyer definitely wants to win that race. Depends on whether or not he wants to be, with his family, take life a little slower, if he might not want to run a super speedway race, which is understandable. But the Bristol Dirt Race is definitely high up on his list of ones to run. Maybe, just maybe, the Ricky Stenhouse Jr. incident may sway his decision a little bit. Doesn't want to get involved in a wreck like that. But Clint Bowyer is still eyeballing at least making a dirt race next season, because right now it looks like there's going to be more than one dirt track on the schedule for next season. Maybe if he drives for Stuart Evernham, Tony Stewart will do some talking and convince him to run Eldora if it's on the schedule, for instance. So I could see something like that happening. Boyer's at least going to run like 1 or 2 races next season. That's almost a guarantee. Where it is, most likely the 2 tracks I just listed off, but obviously that's subject to change. Ray Evernham, as you recall, when Bill Elliott retired, he had Bill run a couple races each year in an R&D car, the number 91. I'm assuming, Ray's a very smart man. He's probably going to want Clinton Bowyer to run a couple races in the next-gen car for Stuart Evernham to get that organization up to speed, especially with a champion the caliber of Clinton Bowyer. Obviously, Kevin Harvick's a champion as well, but why wouldn't you want 2 champions' opinions? You know what I mean? It just makes the team better. Now, question number 2, is there any truth to Jack Roush offering a prominent Cup driver / owner a role at Roush Racing? So, driver-owner role, that would likely go to Ryan Newman if he opts to not buy out half of the organization and just try to be a owner of the organization. But the way I see Ryan Newman, personally, is that he is going to try and do his own operation. He's that kind of independent personality that we haven't really seen in quite a long time, quite frankly. Also, going off his modified organization, the one he runs the Wheel and Modified Tour on occasion, the 7 and 77 cars, he will likely have a partner in Mike Kerb, who fielded Richard Petty in his final 2 career wins in 1984. So if Ryan Newman goes out on his own, he would have some pretty good backers with him, in particular Mike Kerb, who sponsors Grant Enfinger, as you know, and Bill McAnally, and quite a few organizations right now. But also, he'd be with Brad Means, who is, has a lot of experience in team ownership from his dad, Jimmy. Not really direct team ownership experience, but he's been part of a family-owned organization his entire life. So it would be a good organization for those 3 to go independent. And so Jack Roush probably wouldn't offer a current Cup Series driver a driver-owner role at Roush Fenway Racing, because I personally expect them dropping to a 1-car organization next season. Even though they've been finding some speed, I just don't see 2 full-time cars next year unless they get a really, really good deal. Say someone like, I don't know, Martin Truex Jr. buys in, because he's on a contract season. He has not been re-signed yet. Say if Truex does it, then yeah, I'd say they'd get 2 cars. They'd have one for Buescher, one for MTJ with some kind of Bass Pro deal. But I don't really see that happening. It just doesn't quite sound like something that Martin Truex Jr. would do. But, the offer's there, I bet. Jack Roush is looking to either save his second car with a good sponsor, maybe a paid driver, or a driver ownership deal like that, or just run one car next season. So it'd be a very interesting choice either way for Jack Roush, but we know that some decisions are going to be made and that there will not be status quo at Roush Fenway Racing next season. The story will obviously evolve as time goes on, so we'll have some more information on that in the coming months. Next question from Jay Mainman. Do you think that any old manufacturers could come back or new manufacturers come in when the next generation car comes in? Not directly. Not the first year of the next-gen car, not even the second. It's going to be until probably 2024 when that whole new engine package comes out for the Cup Series cars, potentially hybridized or electrified. We're not exactly sure how exactly that's going to work out, what their plan is there, but it's going to require the new engine formula to come out before we see any old or new manufacturers. Right now, we're just going to be seeing the three that we know and that we're comfortable with right now, Ford, Chevrolet, and Toyota. It's going to stay that way for the next couple of seasons, even with the next-gen car. We're trying to build a basis for the future right now. We're not stepping directly into the future. So there's going to be some wait until we see some new manufacturers. Next question from Todoroki. Could there be a United States triple header? I'm thinking like a Texas Triple Crown. We go to Circuit of the Americas in Austin, Texas, Texas Motor Speedway in Fort Worth, and Texas World in College Station for a triple header. And whoever gets the most points in this triple header gets $1 million. Fans like big cash payouts, which is exactly right. So it's going to attract more attention to fans. Also, another eligible state is Florida with Daytona, Homestead, and Palm Beach. I would very much like to see something like that happen. Right now, it seems like the tracks in Texas are considered interchangeable for some reason. Like right now, there's talks of COTA already being off the schedule for Texas World, which would be an interesting situation, but then you'd have to wonder, what are we going to do with the Budweiser shootout that's postseason? It would probably go to a different racetrack. But I would say that a triple header deal like that would be very interesting to see, and it may potentially save some cost on the organizations. Even knowing that, like with the West Coast swings we do, it's rather costly to go out west, very far away from your race shops, home, in the southeast and in Charlotte area. It's normally difficult to go out there and do it for 3 consecutive weeks. However, it is easier than going back and forth. Like if you were to go from Texas, Atlanta, Fontana, Darlington, that actually costs more because you're going back and forth. At least when we go to a West Coast swing, you normally show up with a truck that has your cars set up for the next 3 weekends, so you can stay on the West Coast for the whole swing. And obviously, if we did a triple header in Florida, that wouldn't really require too much cost in transportation. Because even though it's still a pretty long drive, especially from Homestead, Miami, Florida, to Charlotte, North Carolina, it's still a lot closer than Texas. So NASCAR is definitely going to be looking at the cost effectiveness of this situation. My money's on Florida getting the honor of having a triple header, but I'd personally like to see Texas because it gives you the most variety. Obviously Daytona, Homestead, Palm Beach, those are also very different racetracks, but in my opinion, COTA and Texas World alone, the contrast between those racetracks is huge. Big road course, 20 turns, and then a simple, high-banked 4-turn oval. And I know that, Daytona's that way, and Palm Beach is pretty technical too, but Palm Beach is not COTA technical. COTA is almost too many turns for stock cars, in a way. And then you throw Texas Motor Speedway on top of that, which is likely going to get some renovations next season to make the racing a little bit better at that racetrack, and also they're likely going to pave the grass on the front straightaway to keep big pileups from happening. That would be a very interesting situation to see, and I'd like to see the $1 million put up for it. I'm just saying. It's looking like COTA might be bought by SMI, so maybe that could lead to a situation like this happening much easier, because they obviously own Texas Motor Speedway as well, so maybe that could sway some of the decisions. So it'd be a very interesting thing to see. I'd like to see it personally. Now, question number 2, could the wing be reintroduced with the next-gen car? Maybe try and have NASCAR test it out on a car on this so-called Gen 6.5 car, the Gen 6 with the parts and specs of a next-gen car. So, when it comes to a wing, I don't know the exact reason why we put the wing on the car tomorrow. I believe that we personally did it just to kind of look different, if that makes any sense. It did work for downforce. It worked very well. The only trade-off was it also worked for lift backwards. The cars kept flying, even in Atlanta, which you almost never see with any other car that we ran in our sport. Even when we ran the COT with just the spoiler, cars weren't getting into the air like Keselowski did back in 2010. So I think that major safety concern is why we're not going to be running wings anymore, because the way it was the two triangle winglets on the side with the base wing in between, so that there was air that could pass underneath it and act kind of like a wing on a plane and just kind of lift the car once it turned backwards. A lot like ground effects work on a prototype or a Formula One car, something like that. It works really good when you're going forward. The moment you get backwards or disturb the air that's going onto it, it works the total opposite. We see that a lot. Back in the day with prototype cars, they would have completely flush belly pans, and they would also have ground effects on the front. So it would work to keep the front end of the car down, but the moment it got any separation, it would act as lift and just throw the car into the sky. Kind of a similar thing, but backwards with the wing, with it being on the rear end of the COT. So cars would turn backwards. It would work as downforce forwards, but lift backwards. So that's, I believe, why we most likely won't be using that setup anymore. It looked very neat. I believe it was personally an aesthetic thing that NASCAR was trying to do, maybe make itself more popular along with it, because street cars back then, it would make more sense now, honestly, with the Camaro and the Mustang you can get with wing type things production-wise. But back then, the cars that we ran really didn't often come with that kind of apparatus. You couldn't very often buy a Toyota Camry with that thing strapped on the back. I personally thought it looked great. Aesthetically speaking, it looked fantastic. Kind of reminded me of, if you had like a pony car look with the squareness of the race car, but then the wing on the back kind of made it look like a GT or a touring car. I liked the look of the COT. I just don't think it was very practical, and it really didn't work out very well when it came to the racing. But aesthetically speaking, I wish that all our race cars could kind of look somewhat similar to it. And I also wish that the bumpers on the cars that we have now were as flat as the COT bumpers, because I personally adored tandem racing. I thought it was the safest and the best superspeedway racing that we've had in the last 30 years. And I loved it. I still miss it. But I don't think we're going to get that back either in the same way that it was back in 2011. But I will say this. NASCAR's got a good thing going with the spoilers that we run right now. They're very practical. The downforce that they're producing is exactly what NASCAR wants. It's easier to regulate, quite frankly, than the wing. I don't want to ever see us get into some kind of controversy like we're seeing in Formula One right now with bendy wings, even knowing that NASCAR hands out all of them anyway. All the spoilers and stuff are handed out by NASCAR. They're not built by the teams. Still, I don't want to see any of that crap. So I'd say that stick to the spoiler while we still can, and we can regulate downforce pretty darn well with that thing. And if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Next question from RFJ. Could next-gen truck and Xfinity cars be coming soon? Ones that look more stock. So, I think that it's something that's going to need to happen within the next 5 to 6 years, but I don't know how cost-effective it's going to be. In particular, I worry about the Xfinity series, which, we're running a car in Xfinity. It is the COT still. It's the same car we've been running in Cup since 2007, because obviously, the chassis on the current Gen 6 cars are the ones we ran on the COT as well. Nothing's actually changed with the chassis itself. Obviously, a couple more bars have been put in since Newman and Kenseth incidents. Newman in 2009 when the roof collapsed in a little bit. Kenseth at Pocono earlier last season. Some minor differences have been made to, the roll bars and stuff like that, but we're running more or less the same stuff that we've ran since 2007. Xfinity's been doing the same thing, and I think that Xfinity is probably going to need to switch to a more modern formula. Otherwise, they're just going to lose relevancy because, they're still running carburetors in the Xfinity and Truck Series, even knowing that it keeps the costs down, it keeps things easy to work on. I still think that there's going to have to come a time when NASCAR makes a decision and decides to revamp the lower developmental divisions. When is that coming? My earliest guess is about 5 years is when it could happen at the earliest. I'd like to see it happen a little sooner, but it's probably kind of the far future until that happens. I'd love to see it because we have to get the lower divisions back up to a standard of being with Cup when it comes to technology, and we're pretty close right now. But once the next gen car comes in, Cup is going to be in 2030, and the Xfinity Series is going to be in 1997. So we're going to have to figure out how to get the Xfinity and Truck Series up to speed. I don't know what we're going to do about ARCA, quite frankly, because ARCA is going to be utilizing the Gen 6 car, but that can only last for so long because new Gen 6 cars won't be built after the next gen car comes in. So obviously a lot of stuff's going to have to be changed in the next 10 years. Big decisions out of the sanctioning body of how our sport's going to look as a whole. Obviously they're setting the basis for the future of Cup, but you can't forget about the series to get there. Like I've been saying all throughout the year on these post-tech episodes, you can't have a tower without a base. And so we need that base to find any type of success with a top level. If we forget about Xfinity and Truck, Cup won't exist. Especially ARCA, which is the entry level. So we need to have a good baseline to get in to the Cup Series. So I would expect a next-gen program for Trucks and Xfinity to come out probably about 5 years from now. It should happen. Whether or not it will, I can't guarantee it. I've heard almost no talks about it, but I personally believe that it needs to happen. Otherwise, we're just going to be left behind, I guess you could say. Next question from NASCAR Fan 88 Official. Could NASCAR at any chance change the track they use for the All-Star race with a dirt track? I like your thought process. Follow-up question, what dirt track could the All-Star race be if this happens? So, I've heard talks of really almost every racetrack being considered as an all-star facility. With it being a non-points race, it opens up a whole lot of opportunities for NASCAR to try out new things. They obviously utilized a Gen 6.5 package in the All-Star race this season and the All-Star Open at Las Vegas. I really doubt that we're going to run the Las Vegas dirt track because how bad the dust was there back in the ARCA Menard Series West races that were ran at that facility. My personal bet would be that it would most likely be an SMI dirt track like Charlotte. They put a lot of emphasis into renovating that place with the Camping World Truck Series visiting that racetrack this year. So you could very well expect the All-Star race to potentially be moved back to Charlotte next season, but it would be on the Charlotte dirt track. I would definitely like to see that myself. Other dirt tracks that could potentially do it would be Knoxville. That'd be a very high-profile choice. Eldora as well. I don't think they would want to do it at a track like, say, DuQuoin. Just due to the size of that racetrack, it is 1 mile. They can kind of get spread out. They want to keep the action close, I believe, for the All-Star race. So my personal bet would be either Knoxville or Charlotte. I think that those two would be on top of the list, but I definitely would like to see an all-star race on a dirt track because, Knoxville Nationals, huge, big money, sprint car race. Why not have a $1 million payout in the NASCAR Cup Series at Knoxville? Come on, sounds almost natural, doesn't it? Having that big of a payout at a racetrack that's known for large purses. So I would absolutely like to see that in the future, and it would make things definitely different for the All-Star race for at least a year, because what's cool about the All-Star race, we finally got back into the mentality of what it was when the All-Star race was first invented for the Cup Series back in 84 into 85. That it was going to change racetracks every single season. That was the initial plan. Then it got to Charlotte the second time and then just stayed at Charlotte until this year when it was ran at Las Vegas. But now we are finally into the mentality of having it cycle through racetracks. And it's not exactly a selected list of racetracks that it could go through. It's more or less every year it may be at a different racetrack and you don't know what's coming next. It's not a planned schedule for, I can't tell you what the 2036 All-Star race is going to be. It's a year-by-year thing. The sanctioning body decides where it's going to be. But honestly, SMI owns Bristol. You could just run a Bristol Dirt All-Star race if you really wanted to. That'd be a fun show as well, going off of the Food City Dirt race. An absolutely phenomenal event. Might as well run the All-Star race there because the racetrack is perfectly set up for it, and it could easily happen. And the next question from Colin McCoy. After the dirt race at Bristol, has any of the dirt track ringers considered making a start on the asphalt? That's a very good question. Rico Abreu is in talks with Gaunt Brothers, maybe getting 1 or 2 more starts this year, because obviously they didn't make the race at the Bristol dirt track, and they still have faith in Rico that, the incident he got in with Christopher Bell in his heat race wasn't his fault. They do want to get Rico into a race at some point over the course of the 2021 season. Another driver who is definitely being watched right now is Ben Rhodes for NY Racing. He had a very good race going until he got trapped a lap down in the Bristol Dirt Race. Ben Rhodes may get another start or so over the course of the year for NY Racing in the 44 car. You could also potentially expect Stuart Friesen in the 45 for 2311. That could likely happen more than once this season, because it was a great showing at the Bristol Dirt Track. They could potentially give Stewart a race at a track that he does good at in a Camping World truck, more like an intermediate, like a Kansas or something like that. And I believe that Stewart would have a very good showing because the equipment's pretty good at 2311. They just need to figure out how to get their team, the strategy down and get the team up front, because they've been struggling with the small things. It's been about finishing races for that organization, not exactly running up front, because they have the pace to do it. They just can't finish the races. So they got to get those finishing positions figured out, and then Stuart Friesen would likely have a pretty good run if he made a start on asphalt this season in the NASCAR Cup Series. And, obviously the door's wide open for quite a few of those dirt racing ringers to make a start this year. Next question from Order of Tier. With the announcement of Kyle Busch's penalties following the Bristol Dirt Race, is NASCAR setting a precedent for the remainder of the season? So, really, the way NASCAR is handling this, I believe that it has shown that you can't get away with making consistent failures in the eyes of the sanctioning body, causing, 4 wrecks in one race, hitting practically every single car you see, and then, getting involved in what may or may not have been an intentional incident, but still a very much avoidable incident under caution. That's what NASCAR didn't like, was the fact that it happened under yellow. So I believe it's setting a precedent that they will absolutely take action if they deem necessary. Now, they took action last year on Kyle Busch after wrecking Christopher Bell, if you don't recall, at Iowa last season. So it's not the first time that they've put the hammer down on Kyle, but also it's going to prove a point to all the drivers in the field that you can't quite go into another series in particular and start wrecking people like that. Even if it was not intentional, pay attention. Caution lights are on. Guarantee a spotter was screaming at him. Caution flag's out. What are you doing? So you have to pay attention and stay out of these sticky situations. And Kyle Busch he's always one step away from a suspension, it seems like. Tremendous race car driver, winningest Cup Series driver in the field that's still active, full-time, that is. But he keeps getting involved in these silly little things that it really puts him in a hole. He's had to miss 3 races because he's going to miss the upcoming weekend at Pocono. He's going to miss a full 3 races of points due to his suspension. That could very much lead to an elimination later on in the season. Even knowing he's locked in with his win, if things don't go right in the playoffs, well, these 3 races might have been important to race. Let's just say that. Is NASCAR also putting themselves into a corner by not penalizing drivers who wreck someone intentional or otherwise under caution, like Bell wrecking Justin Haley at the 600? So this is a very loosely enforced situation here. NASCAR doesn't exactly have a written rule for this. I imagine after all the incidents this season, they will at some point very soon. But the way it seems like NASCAR handles this is, if you run into each other under caution, that's fine as long as you don't wreck the other car out of the race. Now, Justin Haley got quite a bit of damage from that incident with Christopher Bell, but he was not DNF'd from that incident. However, the Unzicker situation could have actually injured Unzicker had he spun the 45 truck the other way into the wall, and it happened after the caution flag was out with the 45 getting terminal damage. Both wrecks happened under caution, but only one wreck could have severely injured a driver, and only one wreck happened that was clearly avoidable because, Bell and Haley were running really close as the field was checking up under caution. Haley got turned to the inside wall while they were just trying to sort themselves out and get in the lane. But the situation with Kyle Busch and Ryan Unzicker could have easily been avoided. Kyle Busch just could have slowed up some more or, try to go around the 45 truck instead of just make contact with him. I think also what NASCAR didn't like was kind of how frivolous the situation was. It was a wreck between a truck that was 2 laps down and a truck that was 4 laps down. So I personally believe that these are all judgment calls, which obviously, it's a hard situation when you're making a judgment call. It makes everyone kind of feel uncomfortable because there's no, yes or no. You have to balance all these factors to get, who's guilty of what, who deserves suspension, who deserves a penalty, how do we officiate this? But I think that NASCAR probably made the right decision on Kyle Busch's penalties because it would have easily injured Unzicker had that situation gone a little bit worse. And I think that's what NASCAR really is looking at. So it's a kind of a slippery slope when you think about it because, why isn't everyone suspended for wrecking people intentionally or even by accident if it was avoidable? But right now, it just seems like NASCAR is officiating this based off of whether or not the car was completely wrecked out of the race due to the contact. And if you wreck someone completely out of a race due to contact with someone else, that is how you get suspended. It seems like if you can both continue, even with damage on both cars or just one of them, that will lead to just maybe a scolding in the hauler. And now the final question from RFJ. Does Kurt Busch retire after 2021? That's a really good question. Right now, I honestly can't tell you because he has an option year on his contract. He could take one more year up, at CGR. He almost won the championship in 2020, got all the way down to Atlanta, was leading in the final few laps of the race, got up into an incident, hit the inside wall, and knocked all the speed out of the one car. Even won 2 races, one at Gateway and one at Martinsville. Right now, Kurt Busch has not been finding very much success in the season. He had a pretty good run going at the Bristol Dirt Track, though. Was running in the top 5. But we're not really into the stretch of the season that Kurt Busch does good at. Kurt Busch starts to really shine once we get to the shorter racetracks, such as Gateway or Martinsville, which he won at last season. We got to get into the short track portion of the season. Once we roll into places like Richmond, Loudon, Gateway, Kurt Busch, I guarantee, was going to start running up front. It's just right now, this is not his time of the year. So really, it all depends on whether or not Kurt Busch stays competitive at the racetracks that he's good at. If he runs like 15th instead of top 5 at Martinsville late in the year, or doesn't even have a shot at running up front at Richmond or something like that, then most likely CGR will not take up the deal to extend Kurt Busch's contract. But right now, I believe that they're satisfied because none of their teams have been very quick so far. Quinn Half has been doing pretty good in his first full-time season, but nothing spectacular. Allgaier showed a lot of pace to start the year, but that's been just completely going downhill as the season progresses. So right now, we just have to wait and see on the Kurt Busch situation. Things aren't looking too good right now, but Kurt Busch, if he really does want to run that next-gen car season, it was mentioned earlier the potential of Jack Roush selling out half his team to a driver-owner. I bet you could put Kurt Busch on that list because, Kurt won a championship with the Cat in the Hat before, back in 2004, even though that was almost 20 years ago. Kurt's matured a lot since then. Obviously he was released from his contract with Jack Roush early after that whole DUI in 2005, but Kurt's a different person than he was back then. He's a lot more mature as a human. I would expect that he could probably appeal to Roush Fenway Racing and maybe get a driver ownership deal if Ryan Newman just decides to go completely out on his lonesome, sort of, with Brad Means and Mike Kerb as his partners. Not with any other established team, but just with their own organization. So Kurt Busch, I think, will run at least one more year. Maybe not with Chip Ganassi Racing, though. That's really what's up in the air right now. But Kurt Busch absolutely wants to run at least one season in the next-gen car to at least complete his career and his NASCAR Cup Series career with different cars. Because if he gets 1 year in the next-gen car, that means he's ran Gen 4, COT, Gen 6, next-gen. I'd call that a pretty complete career. He could be one of the few drivers to do that on a full-time basis. Coming into next season, he and Kevin Harvick would be the two front-runners of drivers who have done that on a full-time basis in their NASCAR Cup Series career. So I think that Kurt Busch will either run majority season next year in like a part-time deal or actually nail a full-time contract with CGR or buy into half of Roush Fenway Racing. My money is on him going back to CGR if he can have a good late run in the season like he had last season. Because the beginning months of the year, just for some reason, do not appeal to Kurt Busch. Just wrong tracks on the schedule for his driving style. Once we get later in the season, the short tracks start popping up more often. Kurt Busch really finds some speed, and that's what led him to almost winning the championship last season. So keep your eyes on Kurt Busch still. Even though things aren't looking too good right now, he could still rebound and pull off another great run and attempt to win the championship for the first time since 2004. That would be a record, by the way, of most time between first and second titles. Currently, the record's held by Terry Labonte, 84 to 96. Kurt Busch could take it, being 2004 and 2021, if he's lucky this season. And so, folks, that does it for episode number 11 of Post Tech. We hope that you have enjoyed it. The next time you'll be seeing us, we'll be out at Pocono Raceway, where we give you the full race broadcast of the Gander RV duels from Pocono. Obviously, Duel 1 and Duel 2. Duel 1 will set the starting grid of Duel 2. It will be an inversion of all the lead lap cars from Duel 1. And obviously, with the Super Speedway downforce and Speedway horsepower package at Pocono, the racing dynamic's going to be a whole lot different, hopefully bringing some excitement to Pocono Raceway, and it should be a good one going off of some aerodynamic tests. And so, folks, we'll be seeing you at Pocono, Pennsylvania at the Pocono Raceway for all the action at the Tricky Triangle. We'll see you then.